So when it comes to my gaming repertoire, my interests are pretty focused. I love action RPGs full of exciting moment-to-moment action, classic RPGs that'll take my character through a grand adventure, and then first-person shooters mostly for the competitive nature, but again, that moment-to-moment action. So Himeko Sutori doesn't fit into any of those genres. Instead, it's a turn-based RPG set into a classic pixelated world inspired by Ogre 64 and has traces of the classic Final Fantasy tactics within its DNA. But just because this isn't an action RPG, a classic RPG, or a first-person shooter doesn't mean that it lacks those qualities that I love about those genres. In fact, Himeko Sutori does a good job of taking a handful of those things I enjoy and then molding them into a tactical RPG format that I began to appreciate the more I played it. So let's go back and let's start from the beginning. So Himeko Sutori is a tactical turn-based RPG developed by Rockwell Studios and released in January 2021 for $23 US. It's currently available on Steam with a very positive rating. Now I'm going to keep things spoiler-free so you can experience it for yourself, but the story of Himeko Sutori places you in control of Aya, the youngest daughter of House Furukawa. And as you play through the story, you're going to begin to learn that not all things are as peaceful or as simple as you thought they were. You learn about old conflicts that are still smoldering within tension, questionable decisions that were made in hopes of bringing peace to the kingdom, and a mysterious group of individuals who are guarding the world gates. So from the top, it's a pretty straightforward story. It doesn't really color outside the lines too much, right? You play as a princess with her sisters who happen to be a knight and an archer, and then you have a couple minions like your pet wolf and your fairy who heals you. And along the way, you're going to find tons of other expendable party members to fill up your ranks and then use them in battle as chess pieces. But these characters will die. Once they die, they are gone forever. So be sure not to get too attached or equip them with some of your best gear, because once they are gone, they are truly gone. And I'm a big fan of this permadeath feature because it really forces you to be strategic with your troops rather than just rely on size and numbers to overpower enemies with no repercussions. So managing your troops and assembling strong groups known as lances is incredibly important. And these lances can be composed of whatever character you want to put in them. You can have a lance of all damage characters, all healers, all tanks. It's really up to you and what you want to do. But these lances will benefit from having a strong leader whose passive bonuses will boost the others within that lance. So for instance, you can take a character and class them as a knight, and this will boost all of the cadet classes within that lance. So naturally pairing those together will form a synergy. And forming synergies like this is crucial for making battles much more manageable because you will have a good understanding of what that particular lance will be strong or weak against. So let's just say it's not advisable to have a lance of just thrown together classes because you want to kind of explore and see what everything's all about. I did that at the start. It made my first boss a brutal battle. I died over and over and over again because I was so mismatched in my lances. So once I took a second to go back and look into my lances, I figured out that really nothing was lining up. There was no bonuses, no passive support, no synergies, and I took a second to go through and class my characters differently. Once I did that, that battle was such a cakewalk. It was awesome. And from that point onward, I looked at every single character and was like, okay, I need to figure out good synergies, strong classes, and just invest heavily in those. So speaking of classes, right? Himeko Sutori has a pretty decent progression system for each character within your army. As they're used in combat, they're going to gain experience and eventually level up. And when you level up, you're given a choice of cards to choose from. Each one is going to give something random to that character, and these cards can include new skills, classes, stat boosts, passive bonuses, weapon proficiencies, and this is where you can truly customize your character and begin building that bulletproof army. And I both like and dislike this system. I like that I'm given a choice of bonuses for that character, but what I don't like is how wildly random these cards are. So for instance, I was building a healer character to keep my lance topped off. She leveled up and she was given choices all pertaining to heavy weapons or a damage increase. These would be awesome for a damage character, but it doesn't help that particular healer at all, and it ended up being a wasted level up. And in a game like this, where you need to be constantly improving to make things easier or helping keep up with enemy encounters, wasted levels feels like a huge blow to morale and a step backward. And I think a system where those cards are going to be targeted towards whatever class is currently equipped on that character would do much better than what we have currently, where it's just a shotgun blast of random bonuses. Some will help you, some won't. And speaking of classes, changing these is super easy. You just go into your character screen, click on change class, and as you level up, you'll unlock more of them, and you can easily swap back and forth. Each class will specialize in something. So you have a knight, which is really good with a sword and shield. You have some classes like the acolyte that are good at healing. You have the paladin, the cleric, the druid, the dryad, the ranger, the forester, the grifter. There are tons and tons and tons of classes to choose from in this game. And the cool thing is all of them specialize in something. They're strong against a certain type and they're weak against a certain type. So learning the ins and outs of all of these classes is incredibly important to putting together a truly effective lance and army. So building on that progression, each character also has a few slots that you can equip with gear to help round out their class identity. So if you want a healer, you can toss on some healer armor and a weapon. If you want a knight, then you can go set the class to a knight and swap all to knight gear. So the system itself is incredibly flexible, which is great because this has really opened up some nice opportunities to quickly change how effective a lance is against other enemy types. Now, characters do share gear, so if you want multiple characters to use a certain shield, you will need multiples of that particular shield. So let's go ahead and let's switch to talk about gameplay a little bit. So the game is split into two perspectives. While in town, you're able to freely move about, interact with NPCs, buy things, sell things, all of the classic town things. And this gives off some real Octopath Traveler vibes because it uses 2D sprites set in a 3D pixel world. Now, on the other hand, while you're out exploring the world outside of settlements and towns, you're going to move about from hex to hex on like a grid-based system. You're going to discover ruins to explore, underground mines, camps, enemy troops to fight against. And while you're moving through all of these tiles, you're going to consume food and energy, which means you need to have enough resources to support your expedition, or I'm assuming bad things will happen. I never ran out of food. I always took a rest when I needed to, and nothing really negative ever happened. So the assumption is there, but I never got to experience that. Now, this whole type of movement is hugely reminiscent of the classic games of the late 80s and 90s. So if you're someone who's a big fan of chess, Final Fantasy Tactics, or just plotting out optimal routes through terrain, then you should feel right at home. And the system itself isn't too punishing from what I experienced. I don't feel like resources were used up too quickly, so it really wasn't something I always had to keep an eye on, which is the way I prefer it. I'd rather play the game than play a stamina meter. And as you're exploring this hex-based board, you're going to see various enemy groups stationed all over the field. These will have flags so you can easily identify what type of enemy it is, and if you click on them, you can see their strength versus your strength, which is important for choosing what battles you want to fight. And once you land on a tile that's shared with another enemy, you will immediately begin combat. At this point, the game takes a step into the standard tactical RPG look and feel that we've seen in the past. You set your starting positions for your troops and then take turns moving them throughout the battlefield. If a troop is caught with their back-facing enemies, they'll be more vulnerable to critical hits. So this is something that you need to take into consideration when strategizing, and this is also where your lance leader comes into play. The higher the leadership stat for your lance leader, the more mobile your group will be each turn, allowing your group to move through more hex tiles and position themselves better. And combat itself, this is an automated affair, so your sprites will automatically attack the opposing enemies, and from what I can tell, it's fairly random unless you choose a class that targets specific enemies, like the Wolf Brute and Wolf Skirmisher, who will either attack the strongest or the weakest enemy. And this was honestly a frustrating part of combat. I really wish I could have just a little bit more control over who I'm targeting, because I would love to be able to burn down certain classes that I know I'm weak against, or I know they're going to be a problem, like an illusionist who was constantly throwing burns on all my characters, and that was a problem. Now, the other frustrating part of combat deals with your three main characters, the sisters. If any one of these 3 die within combat, it's an instant game over. It doesn't matter if you have 100 other troops that are all 100% health. If one of them catches a bad crit and is nuked right at the beginning, GG, thanks for playing, game over. There are a few times where I knew I would have won the battle on the next turn, but unfortunately one of those sisters caught a crit, ended up dying, and it sent me back to my last saved game. So I understand the implication, but I would have liked to see permadeath for random characters and a fainting system for a stronger main characters. This might just be me trying to game the system, but that's something that I feel like is a little bit too intense, especially in a combat arena that's 100% automated and gives you less control than I really would have liked. So the one last thing I want to touch on is the mod system. Himeko Sutori is 100% open to modding support, and it comes with a built-in campaign editor so you can go make your own stories to play through. There are also some mods out there right now that you can go tinker with, like one that makes your wolf 10 times stronger at the start. And the awesome thing is that all of these mods, fan-made campaigns, and tools are able to be easily shared with others. And this is a great addition, and honestly guys, I mean, mods give such an extension to a game's lifespan, and if there's a community for it, you can continue building upon it. I mean, look at Torchlight 2's Synergy mod or Diablo 2. It just makes a world of difference and keeps those games relevant much longer. So to wrap this one up, guys, you can find the link for Himeko Sutori in the description below. It's currently on sale for $17. Please let me know in the comments below if you've played it, if this is something that you are interested in. If you're not interested in it, let's get talking in the comment section below. But as always, this has been Vulkan. I appreciate your guys' support, and I will talk to you next time.